Welcome to the Morgan Streetman Show. We got a very special show for you here today, folks, and we thank you so much for joining us. We're going to be having a couple of my old friends on today, longtime friends of mine, and these gentlemen are involved in a gold mining company that's based out of Canada, and these are some of the most interesting guys that I know, actually. And I really love it whenever they'll give me a little bit of their time to evaluate some of the stuff that I like to look into, because we're all interested in the same kind of things. And so it's really great for me to have the opportunity to bounce some ideas off of them and bounce some thoughts off of them. And that's some of what we want to do today. But before we jump into that, I want to introduce our guests. And we've got here with us the president and CEO of Metalla, Brett Heath, as well as a board member at large for Metalla, and all-around amazing guy, E.B. Tucker, who's one of my best friends and just really have enjoyed our relationship over the years. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
And I was wondering
Morgan.
I was wondering if we could start off, if you guys could just give the audience, give us all a brief introduction to Metalla.
Well, first, Morgan, let me say that I just recently checked, and it's 10 years ago this month is when we first worked together, which is really kind of amazing. So, and you have helped us tremendously over the years. So, as you know, we've been interested in gold for years, and Metalla is a royalty company. So Metalla goes out and buys 1% or 2% of the production of a gold mine, and when you buy a royalty, you don't care what happens to the gold mine, the cost of production, or oil prices, or labor strikes, or crazy dictators that do something in the country that's problematical. Well, all you care about is 1%, 2%. It's the closest thing to having taxing authority that I've ever come across. And so it just so happens that we're focused on the gold business, and we've cobbled together 43 of these so far, and we aim to keep buying them. And what happens is when you accumulate these things, you've got 10, 20, 30 years of 1%, 2%, whatever you buy. And if the gold price rises, that becomes incredibly valuable over time.
And this is a finance part of the industry that's important for the actual gold miners. So when I say you're a gold miner, you guys don't actually have teams out there digging.
We have perfectly manicured nails. We don't do any shovel work or tractor driving or any of that stuff. And in fact, what's fascinating is the royalty industry has revenue per employee numbers that Google envies.
Yes,
you can do $2, $3, $4 million in revenue per employee because you've got some legal expenses and accounting, and you have to have a secretary and these things, but you don't have guys flying around the world doing backbreaking work and setting off dynamite down in the mine. You don't have any of that stuff.
Well, so. I mean, true mining, when you're actually going out and doing the digging, and a lot of that's not done by hand, it's done by big machines. I believe that is the largest CapEx industry in the entire world.
It is without a doubt the world's worst business.
Yeah.
I've analyzed every business you can imagine, and mining is the worst by a mile. It takes incredible amounts of money to get the gold out of the ground. A great movie to watch is Gold with Matthew McConaughey. It's based on a true story of a mining fraud where they said they had all this gold and they didn't have it. It was a legendary fraud in the industry. A company called Bre-X was the genesis of that story. But if people watch that, McConaughey's great in the movie. The storyline's great. It's really entertaining, but it kind of explains in a nutshell how the business works. When the world came to be, whoever put this place together, we're spinning around in the universe, they didn't put any of the gold near freeways or infrastructure of any kind. I mean, they put it in the middle of nowhere, and usually it's in troubling places. Places where you've got to go cut a deal with some guy that's got 10 guys with AK-47s around him, and he wants a payoff or something. It's just awful. Then, as you mentioned, you've got to get $100 million worth of equipment into that backwards place, and all the fuel and water and all this stuff. Well, we just look at that business. That's a lot of work. Who wants to do all that? So for us, we can come in and say we'll buy 1% of that, and we can put a price tag on that. And you're right, it's a finance business.
But by performing that streaming function, you're kind of capturing the best opportunity with the least risk.
You get to choose.
Yeah.
So we look at hundreds of things. I mean, Brett does the hard work in this business. I do some of the other stuff, but he looks at hundreds and hundreds of these things, and there's there's thousands in the world, and you've got to weed them out and pick what you want. And so you don't want to. They're not all the same. I mean, if something is in Nevada compared to Congo, I mean that requires kind of a different set of eyes, and so you've got different kind of return metrics. But yeah, you get to choose. So you choose what's best. We have an opinion of what's best. I mean, there's certain places we think it's easier for people to operate.
Now, Brett, tell us a little bit about your background, because you've got a long background also in the streaming industry.
Yeah, Morgan. So I've been doing streaming for the better part of a decade now. Metalla was started in 2016, so about September 2016. So we're about 2.5 years into it so far, and it's really just a fascinating business. Royalties are some of the most incredible financial products that have ever been designed for the resource business. I mean, they truly give you non-dilutive top-line cash flow. I mean, think about if you could have gotten a royalty on Amazon or Facebook, right?
Yeah.
And top-line revenue. We can do that in the mining business. We can do that in the resource business because we register these royalties on title. And it's important for the listeners to understand, it's not easy. It's not really that easy to get exposure to gold. You've got a few different options out there that people normally end up in, right? You've got physical, which is obviously by far the safest and secure form, but it often comes with very high transaction fees. And, investors sometimes get stuck and these transaction fees kind of eat up a lot of their potential gains if they get some. Now, the other part that investors normally go to are the kind of exchange traded products, right? So you've got these big exchange traded products, whether they're GLD or, other variations of that follow the price of the metal. But the problem with that is that, all it is really a proxy of the metal. I mean, it kind of doesn't really make sense for owning it in the first place, right? You're owning gold for safety. You're owning gold for all the various reasons that you kind of want to hedge against the rest of your life and what potentially could happen. And there's just not a lot of options out there. And a lot of investors will end up in the mining sector or the mining companies and normally never come back because that's a very, very tough business, as EB mentioned. But what we're doing on Metalla and really what we're giving investors is we're giving investors a way to own the gold in the ground by some of the biggest operators that are going to be pulling this gold out of the ground for the next 10, 15, 20 years, and they get paid to wait. So they get all the leverage and more in the event a price goes up, yet they get paid to wait. The ETFs, these other products, physical, they all charge you fees to hold this stuff. So you get the benefits of a growth company. You get the benefits of having that real exposure diversified across the world. And, when gold's in the ground, governments can't take it. That's important, right? And, governments often don't have the ability to and expertise to pull it out of the ground. Some governments have tried, and, we're pretty clear about not going into those jurisdictions, but it's really the safest and most levered way to get exposure to gold and get paid. It's a phenomenal business, so we're really excited about it.
Well, one of the things we do want to talk about, and you've brought up some of it, is some of the difficulties with owning and holding physical precious metals. Because like you said, I mean, not only have you got the transaction costs, like 10% each way, 10% when you buy, 10% when you sell, guaranteed, which, by the way, might eat up your entire 20% gain. But then you've got to store it somewhere. You've got to think about thieves. People will come and steal, particularly if anybody knows you've got a lot of physical gold in a certain location. They might come and try to take it from you. So, I mean, there's a lot of risk in trying to hold precious metals in different ways. If you hold the paper, that kind of defeats the whole purpose, like you're saying, because then you've just got a piece of paper that says you own gold, but you don't have the gold, so that's not very secure. But if you hold the physical, you've got all these additional costs, and you've got to find a place to store it and keep it safe and stuff, which, for a lot of people is going to be a big issue. A lot of people are going to buy some cheap movable safe as opposed to a big, bolted down safe. But heck, folks, how good is a safe if the people come and put a gun to your head and say, give me the combination, right? So, when you've got all of these issues with holding physical, it's important to look for another way to leverage yourself and hedge your other investments against the potential for economic collapse and to catch hold of some of this, what we're expecting to be a rising gold price. And that's one of the things we want to get into and talk about in this show is some of what's been going on with gold over the past decade or so. So we're going to do that when we come back on the Morgan Streetman Show on Money Talk 1010.
Thank you for listening to the Morgan Streetman Show. We hope you enjoyed what you heard, and if you did, please click like and subscribe to help us out. And remember that we recommend that you exercise your brain at least once a week.